Hey everyone. Well, we've already finished off the first month of the year, and now we've finished off the second month of the year. Jesus Christ, I can't help it. So, this is every movie I saw in February, reviewed in less than a minute. Of course, you know the rules. These are just films I watched at home. I won't be including any. I don't even know why I still need to do these intros. You know the drill. Let's just do this. Here's a comedy that pretty much almost caused a war by Korea. The Interview, starring Rogan and Franco, the fun duo, is a fun little comedy about these two who go to Korea to interview the leader, Kim Jong-un. And what follows is some pretty funny stuff. I think this movie is lots of fun just for how incredibly insane it is. Like, you got the guy Kim Jong-un played by Randall Park, who plays him as a cool dude and mostly has a weird sense. It's all sorts of fun. There's a lot of funny moments involving the characters and all the weird, random, stereotypical or politically incorrect things you find. And of course, like I said, this movie was not released in theaters worldwide. It was limited because Korea threatened, saw this movie as a threat to war, and they weren't going to let us release it hard. But that's just what makes it more fun, just from how crazy this was. It's a really funny movie. I definitely recommend it. And another silly comedy. Basketball, from the director of The Naked Gun, and of course Trey Parker and Matt Stone, is a comedy that's all sorts of weird. It's just about these two guys who create this game that's a combination of baseball and basketball, and it goes big. The comedy is all sorts of weird. And while I will admit, not every joke in it was really funny, the stuff in this movie that was funny was honestly really funny. I gotta say, the stuff that did make me laugh, I think really was a fun joke. It's fun seeing some of David Zucker's Naked Gun humor combined with, of course, all the fun South Park humor that these two give us. Seeing that stuff combined into one is honestly, in my opinion, a comedy match made in heaven. So even though this movie, not every joke in this movie landed, in my opinion, it's the stuff that was funny that makes this a fun comedy that I recommend. Alright, enough of the comedies. Usual Suspect is a interesting crime story that follows five or six, forgot how many it was. I think it was like six people who are framed for a crime that we have to identify each one and see which one is the one who did this crime. Well, that's kind of what falls in this movie. It's a mystery film. It's one of those whodunits. And I am a fan of whodunits. They can be well developed. Unfortunately, while this movie's opening and ending were pretty awesome, the rest of it, I think, kind of lowered the bar for me. I don't know. I feel like the middle part of the film kind of took away from the idea. I feel like that's how most whodunits are like. So that's kind of why I would say this movie's just good, not great like other people. But again, I think that the way this film opened and ended was really great. Those are some great stuff. I think that's how I can recommend this movie, how it begins and how it ends. The rest of it, works well fine, I guess. Okay, here's something ridiculous. Conair, starring the Nicolas Cage himself, is a action film involving these guys who are trapped on a plane and pretty much have to survive being stuck on a plane in a rough environment. There's a little bit stuff I can think about to this movie. I mostly like to remember the fun performance that Cage provides. It seems every movie he's in either lands on being funny or so good, yet you can still find something funny about it. But that's not a bad thing. I think Cage is pretty fun for that reason. I think all the other actors do an okay job as well, though. I think Cage kind of took up this movie a little too much. I think his performance was so good and everyone else's kind of was flat in the way, but still, I enjoyed what was good. It's one of those films where you can admire the stuff they did enjoy and just kind of let that take in for how good you found it. But other than that, it worked decently, I guess. Alright, back to the comedies with Seth Rogen again, this time without Franco. I mean, it's his brother, but still. Neighbors is a comedy about two guys who are pretty much against each other as neighbors. So Seth Rogen, has to stop his neighbor, Zac Efron, and try to get him out because he's so annoying. This movie was a little decent. I wouldn't say it was as good as other comedies I saw, mostly because I think The story kind of fell flat at points, but overall, there were still funny moments. I will admit, while this movie did kind of fall flat in its story arc, there was some good comedy involving kind of these two rivalry and stuff. Weird, a lot of weird stuff too. I think this is probably one of Zac Efron's more fun roles. He's not playing a teen guy or one of those cool dudes that girls crush over. Well, I mean, I guess they could, but he's more fun in this movie than in others, and I can forgive it for that at least. Here's Platoon. Here's a fun war film. This movie talks about the tragic events of a war and the ways people have to survive escaping it. I think this movie pretty much goes in a nice direction. It's kind of like a predecessor, in my opinion, to something like Saving Private Ryan, which I've talked about. And Saving Private Ryan is a great movie. Platoon is good. I wouldn't say it's great. It kind of took away in moments, but I did enjoy what I did. I mostly liked how this movie threw in some more comedic actors involved in a more serious role, like Charlie Sheen, Willem Dafoe, or even Johnny Depp shows up. It was more like these actors weren't as big at the time, but this movie kind of put them in a big spot, because like at the time, these actors kind of were a little on a short end. Not many people watched them, but I think this movie got them in a good spot to where they become bigger. So overall, it's not better than Private Ryan's, but still can be pretty good. Still can be interesting. Now, a franchise I'm trying to get into, the View Askew-universe, if I'm pronouncing it right, is a comedy franchise by Kevin Smith featuring the Jay and Silent Bob duo. There's a bunch of movies in them. So far, I've only seen Clerks, and then I watched Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. And technically, I know I'm going out of order, but I don't know. I think since all movies in the franchise are differently titled, not really labeled, I can fly it. Anyway, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back follows this duo and a fun little adventure where they go against Hollywood. It's, as you can tell, it's pretty meta. It's like one of those meta films where you can just find as much meta stuff there is. It's about these two guys who are trying to stop a movie being made. But I think the fun in this movie not only comes from these two being a fun duo, like Jay being the weird, inappropriate one, and Silent Bob just being the one who just goes along, doesn't really talk much. It's more about the supporting cast as well. Like we got Ben Affleck in two roles, Jason Lee in two roles, or Will Ferrell in this movie, which is fun, or even Chris Rock's role is fun. This movie got some fun stuff to it. I think it's a real fun movie to watch. As I try to finish up this Mad Max franchise, especially since we have the new one coming out, I watched Mad Max Fury Road. This film is the adventure taking Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron, pronouncing it right again, and puts him in an exciting new route of the Mad Max franchise. What many see as both a remake and a sequel to the franchise, I see as about just as good as the other movies. I enjoyed this movie. I enjoy it more than the other ones. I didn't think it was amazing. I just thought it was about as good as the other franchise. I think this franchise goes from being a good one for being kind of weird and over the top in moments, but still lots of fun. Fury Road is, of course, a fun film. You got these two guys in a big adventure, and you really can admire all the new stuff to provide, because some, I'll admit, feels a little too similar to the other films, but others you can really enjoy for being new and exciting, most part. Okay, this weird comedy, Grandma's Boy, I randomly came across. I thought it looked simple, about a guy who lives with his grandparents. I thought that'd be fun, fun comedy involving the tale of adults who aren't able to get big. In my opinion, though, this movie kind of went for a different direction. While there is the idea of him living with his grandparents, the big problem is that it doesn't really go for that route of him being unemployed and needing a job. It's more about him actually having a great job, yet still not being paid well, and still having his grandparents be too annoying. But here's the problem. The plot dies down at times. You don't really get anywhere where you can enjoy it too much, and it isn't funny. That's mostly the problem with comedies like this. It's not funny. I wasn't able to laugh as much. I just found most of this to be flat, so I'm sorry, but this movie can become really forgettable. It's nothing too exciting or new you can enjoy. It's exciting maybe like once or twice, but aside from that, it just never got to me. It was mediocre, really. Another mediocre comedy. This is 40, the considered sort of sequel to Knocked Up, when actually it's more of a spin off focusing on Paul Rudd's character. Weird idea. It's a story about him and his wife going through the struggles of turning 40. And there's a reason I didn't like this movie. It is way too mean-spirited. I know someone would argue maybe that's the point because it's supposed to reflect on how rough being 40 is, but man, I could not get into this. I was not able to follow these characters. I just could not enjoy what I was supposed to. I know, again, I need to take it for that reason, but no, it just didn't go to me. It wasn't, I didn't think it was funny. I did not find this funny at all. And at the same time, I did not find it amusing at all. It just was way too mean spirited to where I just kept getting annoyed by most of these characters. I don't know. I just wasn't think this movie was just so mean spirited that I could not get into it as much. I really don't like what they did with this kind of idea. It just kind of made me want to see something good happen and more bad stuff happen. So yeah, it's flat. I wouldn't say it's awful. It's just mediocre, bland, but bland movie. I'm sorry. And another film in the Viewers universe. Again, I'm going out of order. Chasing Amy, starring Ben Affleck and Joey Lauren Adams. This comedy focuses on a girl named Amy, who Ben has a crush on, but he has to face facts that she is a lesbian. It's a lesbian movie. Who figures? This lesbian film is simple, fun. It's just a fun comedy involving all sorts of stuff, like Ben trying to transfer her back into loving him, or Jane Silent Bob showing up randomly. I really am trying to get into this franchise. So far, I've seen Clerks, I've seen Jane Silent Bob Strike Back, and I've seen this movie. So I still need to watch some more. I gotta watch Mallrats, gotta watch the Clerks sequels, and Dogma. So I'll try to get into those movies when I can find them. But right now, I'm going out of order, and Chasing Amy I watched. So, I want to try and get into this franchise. I really do. Just let me go first on first. And so we continue off my journey of doing this because I want to find an excuse to say I don't have many more ideas of doing lists by. So we'll see if I can think of something clever before the next one.